Welcome back, movie enthusiasts, to another episode of Cinema Central. I'm your host, DJ Ace, and if you didn't know, it is Veterans Day here in the United States on November 11th. And to all the veterans, past and present, I want to say thank you for your service. So there's no mistake that a war movie came out on Veterans Day weekend, and that film, of course, is Midway, which covers the iconic battle between US and Japanese forces in the Pacific Theater in World War II. Now, normally I would just give you my initial thoughts on the film and then discuss the spoilers in the review, but since this is a historic film and it's all based on real history, there's not much to spoil. But if you didn't know, America won. On to the review. The main selling point of Midway was that it was going to be a historically accurate film. And after I did a bit of research on the topic before seeing the movie, I can say that it was pretty darn close to the actual events that transpired. The movie even says at the beginning of the film that it was going to be a historic account of the real events. One thing I was not expecting was how far-reaching this movie was going to be, as it covered a lot of topics separate from the Battle of Midway, even though that battle takes up the third act of the movie. The film opens up with the attack on Pearl Harbor and then also covers the Doolittle raid. The rest of the time, the film covers the in-between details leading up to said events, including a couple extra blurbs about other battles that happened but they didn't actually show. Well, and there was actually one additional one that I just don't remember the name of. It is worth noting that the film is 2 hours and 20 minutes long, and to be fair, that's because of all of this content that they're jamming into it, but I love every minute of it. The movie's main character is played by Ed Skrein, who is a U.S. Navy pilot named Best. I do apologize because IMDb doesn't list every character's rank, so I only know their character names. But he plays a big role in the Battle of Midway by single-handedly helping sink 2 enemy aircraft carriers. The other big character is Leighton, played by Patrick Wilson, who is the head of naval intelligence. I like his parts because what he does is very crucial to how events transpired. He has a lot of scenes with Woody Harrelson's character, Chester Nimitz, who is the naval admiral in charge of everything in the Pacific. And to be fair, there were quite a few other actors in this film, including Dennis Quaid, Luke Evans, Nick Jonas, and Aaron Eckhart. As for the film, there was a lot of foreshadowing to the actual battle and just a bunch of little things that happen later in the film. Like at the beginning, Best fakes an engine failure to land his plane while training, but at the end of the movie, he actually has to do that. And also the bit when the Japanese were playing a war game and one of the subordinates put the Americans at Midway, but his superiors were like, no way, they will be there. Well, guess what? They were there. I spoke before that I really liked this film's accuracy. I thought it hit all the major points involved in the Battle of Midway, but some of the finer details were omitted, but understandably, because it is actually kind of confusing anyway. I also really appreciated some of the in-between parts, like how the Americans had not fully cracked the Japanese naval codes, but had just enough to be able to figure out what their plans were. Even the movie was almost entirely all CGI. It's 2019 and technology has come a long way, so I didn't mind that too much because all the battles still looked very cool and engaging. And the other thing to keep in mind is that some of these ships and planes basically don't even exist anymore, so to be accurate, the only option was to digitally recreate some of this stuff. It also allows them to go huge as far as scale is concerned, and that is really beneficial for a movie this and battle this big. However, I think the overall details did suffer a little bit with the actual models. I also really like the soundtrack. It's a weird thing to describe, but it's just the typical war movie soundtrack, but I love that style. And to watch it in the theater, the sound effects just felt really big, which for a movie about big battles, it deserves. One thing that I felt was a missed opportunity was that we all know there's real footage from the Battle of Midway, and the movie goes out of its way to show you that there was an actual film crew on the Midway Islands, but they never actually show any historic footage in the movie, which again, I felt was a missed opportunity. The one thing about doing any movie about historical events is how much of it is accurate and how much is dramatized for the sake of it being a movie. Like I said, this movie does a good job with the historic events, but there are a few moments in the film that are purely just in there for the sake of it being a movie. Like, this was never meant to be a documentary. There are plenty out there on this subject, to be sure. But a prime example, I think, was with Nick Jonas's character, Bruno. You know, his character died horribly, but it was definitely a moment where historic accuracy was skewed for the sake of drama, because that leads to the Japanese, like, attacking the Yorktown, but that's really not how they came about doing that. So there's that. But ultimately, regardless of any of that, you know, it is definitely a very accurate film. You'll definitely learn something from this movie, and that's why I'm passionately referring to this film as a docu-movie, because it's basically a documentary without like being narrated like a documentary, and it's still more of like a movie. It's a crazy melding of the two, but as a fan of history, I love it. And I guess one other major critique is that because this movie deals with real people and real events, it doesn't really leave a lot of room for character development. While there was some, it was mostly between the two main pilots, Best and McCluskey, played by Scrine and Evans. But with a movie sticking to the facts, that doesn't leave a lot of room for the actors to maneuver. However, the acting was all very good. The ending was also really fun because it was just bleeding with patriotism. The movie does the classic thing where they show the real life person and give a little blurb as to what happened to them after the war. And I'll admit, I love that stuff, and I teared up a bit. So in conclusion, as far as war movies go, this was a very enjoyable experience. I thought it was well done, pretty darn accurate, and was very fun to watch in the theater. So if you're looking to watch a film that is not a documentary and want to learn some history, my recommendation is go see Midway. That's it for this review. Sorry that it took me a little longer to get this one out there, but I'm glad I got it done. And I do know what is coming up next. That is going to be Ford versus Ferrari. Very excited for that review. And also, there will be another Facebook special coming soon, so be sure and follow at Ace Cinema Central on the socials. There are plenty more big films looming on the horizon, so no matter what you are watching this week, enjoy yourself.
Booyah!